Welcome to the deep dive. So you've sent us these really interesting excerpts titled Vanbandan,
Hmm.
and our job, as always, is to kind of dive in and pull out the most important bits for you. Think of it as, well, your shortcut to understanding what's going on in these scenes.
Yeah, what they can tell us about, war, relationships, that whole period.
Exactly, without the overload, maybe with a bit of engaging chat along the way.
Right. And these sources, they look like fiction, right? Dialogue, narration,
Hmm.
set in wartime Italy, looks like, and Switzerland too.
Yeah.
So the real task is figuring out what can we actually learn from this? What's the insight into the human side of conflict?
Okay, let's get into it then. Those first scenes at the front, what immediately struck me was the soldier's humor. It's pretty dark.
Oh, definitely that finger game,
Yeah.
running through the ranks.
You go away, sottotenente, you come back, sottocolonnello. And then those jokes about the priest.
Hmm.
Pretty crude stuff.
It is, but it feels like a coping mechanism, doesn't it? That finger game, reciting ranks. Maybe it's about finding some kind of order, even a silly one, when everything else is just chaos.
Hmm. Imposing structure on the chaos. I can see that.
Yeah, a small ritual in the face of, well, losing control.
And mixed in with the jokes, you get these very casual mentions of like frostbite, STIs, even self-inflicted wounds, right alongside combat injuries.
It's brutal. It just levels everything, strips away any idea of war being glorious.
Yeah, no glamour here at all.
But shows the raw reality, the stuff that wasn't heroic, just harsh. Physical suffering, desperation.
Then the story kind of shifts, doesn't it? The protagonist comes back after being away, and there's this contrast. Beautiful spring.
Green fields, yeah.
But then, bam, back to the grim reality, preparing for war, people still getting hurt.
And that line about getting married?
Oh, yeah, to Miss Barkley. After the war, of course. That, of course, is doing a lot of work there.
It really is. It's like life isn't just paused. It's completely up in the air. Every single plan depends on this huge thing they can't control.
Puts everything on hold indefinitely. Mm-hmm.
Creates this constant underlying anxiety. You feel it.
And we get these detailed descriptions, too. The military gearing up,
Yeah.
new roads being built, ambulances lined up, dressing stations.
All the logistics of an offensive.
Right, and this awareness that they're, like, right in range of enemy shells. The line, it looked as though it might be a mess. Talk about an understatement.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. But that feeling, that dread building up, it's powerful. They know it's probably going to be awful, despite all the prep.
And then it hits. The bombardment. It's described as just sudden, terrifying.
That sound.
Yeah.
A cough, a noise like a railway engine starting.
Gives you chills. And then immediately Piscini gets hit. It's just instant
The
violence.
sensory details really pull you in. The sounds, the shock, and Piscini. It's so arbitrary who gets hit, who doesn't.
Then there's this weird acceptance of death almost, the dead guy in the ambulance.
Yeah. And later, the protagonist himself nearly dies, but he describes it as, what was it? Without interest or relation? Like he's totally detached.
That's striking, isn't it? It could be shock, obviously, or maybe a kind of psychological armor.
Like shutting down to survive.
Exactly. Numbness as a defense mechanism. Because how else do you cope with being constantly surrounded by death?
Makes sense. So then he's in the field hospital. We meet other characters, the hog butcher and Rinaldi.
Ah, Rinaldi. Yeah, his sense of humor is even darker, maybe. Very cynical about heroism, war.
Totally. He kind of punctures any noble ideas about it all. Jokes about medals, calls the girls old war comrades.
It feels like weariness, you know? Maybe disillusionment. Or perhaps it's his way of keeping things at arm's length emotionally, protecting himself.
Could be. And then you have the priest offering a different view. Faith, love, trying to find meaning in it all.
Right, these contrasting perspectives on the same nightmare.
And there's that little detail about America declaring war on Germany, but not Austria yet. That's actually a good historical marker. The U.S. declared war on Germany in April 17, mainly over the U-boat attacks. Austria-Hungary came later, December 17. Different political calculations involved there.
Right. Okay, so then we move to Milan. He's on leave, recovering, and his relationship with Catherine Barkley really starts to develop.
They're trying to build this little bubble of normalcy, aren't they?
Yeah, talking about marriage, the future. But it all feels so incredibly fragile against the backdrop of the war.
Well, their connection becomes this anchor for him, maybe for both of them, in this totally unstable world. It's like they're desperately trying to find some intimacy, some meaning.
And her past looms large, right? losing her fiancé.
Exactly. You can see how that fuels her anxiety now, or fear of losing the protagonist, too. So they create this, like, private world, just them.
A sanctuary.
Yeah.
Then a Tory shows up, all about his medals, bragging, making up stories.
Yeah. He's such a contrast to the protagonist, who's much more reserved about his experiences.
It really highlights the different ways people, I guess, process or present their war experience. One internal, one very performative.
Definitely. And even that scene with the cricket horse race.
Yeah.
It feels like another sign of how things are breaking down, morally maybe.
Yeah, wartime opportunities for scams, rules bending or just breaking.
Right.
Then the retreat happens. And wow, that feels like a huge turning point. Everything just dissolves into chaos.
Total disarray. The descriptions of the roads clogged with troops, trucks, guns, and the rain turning to snow. It's just this descent.
And that moment with the soldiers shouting, "Abbasso gli ufficiali," down with the officers.
Chilling. And immediately followed by those summary executions by the Carabinieri.
It's just brutal, the complete collapse of discipline, of order, sheer panic and anger taking over.
Yeah, it shows the absolute danger, the loss of any kind of process or justice, just raw fear and violence.
So he escapes, swims the river, hops a freight train. It feels really symbolic.
Like a break, yeah, a baptism almost, washing away the old life.
And that line, "That life was over. I would never see any of them now." It's so final.
It's a psychological escape as much as a physical one, severing ties with that whole identity, that whole world.
Then Switzerland, supposedly safe, neutral ground, but there's still this tension, right? This fear of being arrested.
The safety feels precarious, temporary. It shows the war's psychological scars don't just disappear when you cross a border. That anxiety lingers.
So they find this refuge in the mountains, trying to build a life, beautiful scenery, but the war is always there in the background.
It's this fragile peace, isn't it? A moment of hope. But you feel the shadows of the war, their pasts. It seems almost too good to last.
And, well, it doesn't. Catherine's pregnancy. It seems like the ultimate hope for a future.
Yeah, the thing that might finally anchor them.
And then it's just shattered, the complications, the stillborn baby, and then Catherine dying. Her last words, "I hate it." Just devastating.
It's the final, brutal intrusion of the war's consequences into their private world. It destroys everything they were hoping for. It shows how deep and lasting the damage is, reaching right into the heart of their relationship.
So beyond just the war narrative, these excerpts really focus on the human relationships, don't they? Especially the protagonist and Catherine.
Absolutely. Their connection evolves so much. Starts off a bit ambiguous, maybe, but grows into this really deep, almost desperate love and dependence.
Shaped so much by her past loss or fear.
Yeah, their relationship becomes this sort of microcosm. Shared trauma, uncertainty, it creates these intense bonds, but they're also incredibly fragile because of the war, because of those past wounds. That private world they build, it's all about that human need for closeness, for escape, when reality is too harsh.
And we see friendships, too, like with Rinaldi the teasing, but also this unspoken understanding.
And the priest, offering that quiet comfort.
Those connections seem vital for survival, emotionally speaking.
Definitely. Camaraderie, shared experience.
Yeah.
It's crucial for getting through something like that. Little moments of lightness, support, they're essential in such a bleak landscape.
And then on the flip side, the interactions with authority figures, often strained, dealing with military bureaucracy. It seems like a constant frustration.
Yeah, it highlights that disconnect, doesn't it, between the higher-ups and the guys actually on the ground.
Yeah.
And the bureaucracy just seems absurd sometimes, adding to the chaos.
Even the nurses are distinct characters. Helen Ferguson, worrying about Catherine. Miss Van Campen, who's really stern. Miss Gage, quiet, competent.
It paints a richer picture. Different ways people react, different ways they offer care or maybe just cope within that wartime hospital setting.
Looking a bit broader, there's this powerful sense of lost idealism, right? A real disillusionment with all the patriotic talk.
Oh, completely. The narrator explicitly rejects words like sacred, glorious, and sacrifice, calls them obscene next to the concrete realities.
Yeah, he says he prefers the concrete things. The names of villages, the numbers of roads, the names of rivers.
It's like those abstract words have lost all meaning. The only truth is in the tangible, the real, the specific details of the experience. It's a search for meaning in the actual world, not in empty slogans.
And tied into that, there are these observations about courage, what it really means, and the psychological toll, which is clearly immense.
Yeah, it challenges the simple idea of battlefield heroics. Maybe courage here is more about endurance, resilience, just holding on to your humanity, maintaining those connections. That seems like the real strength.
There's also this sense of rules just breaking down everywhere. The normal structures of society seem to be eroding under the pressure of war.
Definitely. It permeates everything. Survival often becomes more important than following the usual rules and regulations.
And finally, we get these little glimpses of Italian society itself during the war. Socialism mentioned among some groups, the hint of a black market from the barman.
And even Switzerland, the food shortages.
Right. It shows how widespread the upheaval was. It wasn't just the front lines. The war affected everything, everywhere.
Those details add important context, showing the ripple effects beyond the main conflict zones, hitting neutral countries too.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like these excerpts give us a really raw, intimate view of war's impact. Not the big picture strategy, but how it feels to individuals.
Exactly. It's about the fragility of connection when everything's falling apart, the loss of innocence, the death of ideals, and focusing on those personal stories, those relationships, really drives home the human cost.
Some moments just stick with you, don't they? That dark finger game at the start, the sheer terror of the bombardment, and of course the whole tragic arc of the protagonist and Catherine.
Those specific human moments,
Mm.
they connect you to the experience in a way statistics or grand histories can't. They make the abstract reality of war feel incredibly personal.
So a final thought for you listening. How does this kind of fictional story, focusing so intensely on the personal, the intimate, help us understand the universal experience of war and loss? How does zooming in on individual relationships actually underscore the massive cost of conflict, maybe even more than looking at troop movements or battle plans?
It really makes you consider the power of individual narratives in understanding these huge historical events.
Precisely. By centering the story on people, on their love and loss and resilience, it gives us this incredibly powerful lens on the human consequences of war. History, at the end of the day, is made up of countless stories like these.
Well said.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive, tailored around the sources you sent in. Thanks for sharing them with us. Until next time.